All right, folks. Hey, welcome on back for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk Workshop. Today, Tuesday, not Monday. Today's Tuesday. How about that? A little reschedule within our week here. Today, Tuesday. We normally host this workshop every Monday, but Tuesday, November 19th. Great to have all of us here joining us inside our live trading room, though, here. All of our students, gold, platinum, diamond students of C2 here. Brian, Andrea, Leda, Marcella. Got Kathleen from just before, Gillis, Barb. Got Marush from just earlier. I saw it earlier. Barb, and all of us otherwise. Great to have us there in chat and all of us back on social media. Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works, wherever which you may be residing today on social media. At Cyber Trading You, be a friend, tell a friend. Look at the follow or subscribe channel here. If not now, then at the end of this webinar here. But I'll tell you what, we had a great morning, late morning, certainly on the ACRS stock. It's up about 55% here. I got out just a little earlier to take the money and run. I did think it would top off. It did push up a little bit more. So, this trade ended up working out extremely well, though, in relation to the entry. Every trade begins with the entry, right? And I think that most traders fail because they get too greedy in one variation of another. Maybe they don't set their stop because they're just focused on the goal at hand. Or otherwise, maybe the trade's starting off well for them and they're focused too much on the goal, and then they lose the unrealized profit. It comes dragging back down. It's like, oh shit, what happened? Every trade begins with the entry, though, no matter what, right? Before we start thinking about the goal at the end of the trade, we got to think about the process in which it takes for us to get in, right? And especially with day trading. So right away here, I had a student just mention to me earlier, and it was on a different stock. They got out too soon. It moved up a little bit more on them afterwards. Same thing happened here with myself, right? But if you took a clean entry in relation to where it was trading from the morning session, a clean entry in relation to where we have big iceberg orders out there on level 3 and level 4, if we're taking a trade right above where those big levels are, it makes it a lot easier for us to go with momentum. So let's cover this trade, why this made the move in which it made, and everything else in between. So I'm sure some news came out on this stock, right? If you're just joining us right now, that's relatively new to our trading room or to our social media feeds, just realize that we're not buying and selling because news comes out. If that was the case, take a look at this trade here, WKHS. This stock at least was a good day trade maybe a few days ago. Look at where it's at now, right? So just because news comes out doesn't mean it's going to be a good trade long term, doesn't mean it's going to continue. So a lot of this information our students are very much privy to here, but that's just where I'll mention, at least for the ACRS, it was up in pre-market. It was like floating around there a little bit, but this had a pretty thin order book. Level 3, level 4, the orders were almost non-existent. There weren't really too much larger orders out there. Like the spread was pretty big. Really quick, just a question from one of us right now in private. How do I get access to this workshop, Traders Talk? I'll tell you what, my friend, if you're listening to my raspy, annoying voice right now, welcome to Traders Talk. No, I mean this though. If you're inside our live trading room though, here and you hear me, we're doing our workshop here. So we normally conduct this every Monday, albeit today, Tuesday, but should be good to go though. All of our students here should be able to hear me in chat. But yeah, for the ACRS, listen, it popped in pre-market. I'm sure some news came out. Doesn't mean that it's going to be a good trade. That doesn't mean this is going to take off right away, right? Well, it ended up having a good little pop once the market did open up, right? So it was on our list to begin. We called it out shortly afterwards. This is all the commentary that's in our main chat board for this stock, ACRS. I mentioned it after the market opened up at 9:30. My colleague here, Rich, had a NASDAQ book viewer picture. Now we'll talk about this price here, 413, because you see that written there a couple of times from Rich and then myself. So this was the price that we were centralizing our trade around after the market opened up. Like, it's easy to say, we know it popped, we know it dropped, came back down. So it was like right around 959. I guess that's where Rich wrote that price. We were calling that price out on the microphone over audio, like all in this sequence here. As it was kind of shaken back down, we ended up identifying that as a key level at that point. So let me show you what I ended up seeing here. This is still trying to push right now. All right, so to begin, how about this? This is something we do, take more time on to cover in our actual classes, more phase 2, if anything, actually. But for like Jeff, Brian, Andrea, you got Thomas joining us here, gold student. You got Chris M, you got Pete V, a lot of our platinum students, Alex Poe, Yehuda, platinum and diamond, otherwise. Where do we have a dark orange line going across this page? Where do we see a darker orange line stretching across this heat map here? What do we got? At what price do we see that orange line, right? Grant saying 450, Leonard 450, George 450. Yeah, right there, right? Well, they make it 449 here to be exact. They had an order at 49 instead of 50, I guess this was at. But everyone answering the correct line right here, right? How many shares is this? How many shares is this orange line worth? What does it say there? What do you see? How many shares does that orange line represent roughly? George and Grant both saying 56K. Yeah, I mean, it says it right there to the right. Might be tough to read. I wish they had like more bold font so you could see it a little darker, deeper there. But 56,571 shares. That's how much volume is at $4.49, right? Now, follow my cursor here. Earlier, we had this like pretty big iceberg order showed up. It was actually an order on the bid that popped up momentarily. So it was out there. This red line here. How many shares is that, folks? How many shares is that one worth? Maybe 56K plus 101,000 more, right? 157,000 shares popped up on the bid. Let me ask you, what's a larger size? The size that's at 449 here or the size that's at 413? So this became a key level once this order got filled. It was once the order got broken through in which it became a big level from that point. Because, hey, it broke right below this order here and it tanked. Quite frankly, it broke below support and it tanked. Let me ask our students. We just covered this in our charting class just yesterday in phase 1. We didn't even go over bookmap with it. It was just basic charting. But when a stock breaks below support and it tanks, support should then become what? What should support become then in that case? What do we got? Brian, Eddie, Leda, Marcella. Perfect. Resistance. Now, I will say, though, just one disclaimer here on this trade. It dropped off perfectly from that point. So I moved on from this trade in my mind, on my platform. Once this dropped off, I'm like, the hell with this thing. I'm just going over to a different stock. I want to make it known that because it did push up here. It tried to make the break above that price here at this point, and it pulled back. I would have expected that anyway. I wasn't even watching this at that point. So I just shoot straight in front of you folks. I'm going to tell it how it is. If I got caught in this, I'd let you know. I wasn't even watching this at the time. So even in this case, it broke below support here at 9:44 in the morning. It went to test it here at 10:24, 10:25 in the morning. That's way too much time in between level tests anyway. And that's just point blank it. So I didn't even watch that at the time, but if I did, I wouldn't have tried to jump in right away there, right? Poked above it, came back down, and it even broke lower. Now, I was on a coaching call with one of our students here at the time, and this ended up beginning to make a push back up. So the more it could look to push up against that level is showing you that there's a fighting chance. I didn't think it would have a fighting chance once it tanked like this and it pulled back. So, and even beforehand. But I came back over to the trade. I forgot, maybe it popped back up on my scanner. Maybe it was on my book map and I just clicked on it. I was like, oh shit, this is coming back up again. If it's going to keep fighting that level, it's going to keep trying to poke at that level, stab at that level, then you got to think the more it does it in a smaller concentration and a smaller span of time, it's more prone to make that push. So I took this on two entries together to make the entry all together there. So it's 500 shares total. I got filled pretty much at that same price. I was trying to get in above it. So, it took two entries here at the time, 500 shares, and it pushed up pretty well. Hey, how far am I trying to see the stock move up to? Well, let's look at the daily chart. Because this stock actually had a pretty sick gap that it filled. I mean, this is a perfect big gap here that it had the chance to even try and fill a little bit. And it filled all of it, right? I mean, it moved all the way up to, 433, let alone 466 or whatever this is here. And at that point, I scaled out. I took my exit pretty much right around here. Where'd I get out? First half was at 48. Then the second half was at afterwards. It was even when it broke above it, I just thought it would pull back. So I got filled on the second half at 71. It was good money. It was a good trade. But at this point, it kept going up a little bit more, maybe. The trends, continued. It was looking strong still. Now, at that point, our next major resistance, our next larger resistance, likely would show from Bookmap here, but it would be at $5, right? There was one here, 469, which kind of matched with that gap fill. And then after that, $5, right? Kind of funny. This thing has orders, like, funny enough, like they're almost like too smart. You have some orders that are here at like 49 or like whatever it was at. And now this one's at like what, 50 or at 544. It's right below the 50-cent levels, right below the whole number levels there. But essentially, this stock ended up making a pretty good push up. It pulled back below this line here now. I'm not expecting much more out of this. It filled the gap already. It actually moved up higher. It ended up even trying to break above the next level here at 5. Now at this point, back down. So I guess if it holds this as support, there's a fighting chance for this to make one more push. But it's up 50% today, and it ended up making a crazy move from yesterday too. So even dating back to the beginning of this week and the end of last, it was at like nearly $2 at the end of last week. It moved up to 5, 250% gain. I would think that this stock is more exhausted now at this point. It's probably going to look to pull back or make lower highs. I would not be as, aggressive on this as I was from earlier today. That's all. All right. So, I had a couple questions on that, at least going into Traders Talk. Wanted to begin by going over this ACRS trade. Now, I'll tell you what, I'll do the same type of review, although I didn't have any action on this trade myself. I didn't trade the AI today. We called it out. It was on our watch list. Called it out as soon as the market opened up. One of our students, Chris, right away was all over it. So a bunch of us were able to get in on this trade. Hey, I was focused on ACRS. I was focused in on also, how's it going, DraftKings? My swing trade on DraftKings option calls, so that's doing pretty good. But I'll tell you what, you can't trade everything. And AI, we called it out. It made a great move. A bunch of our students cleaned up on it. I know that for a fact. Like Chuck got like $1.12 on it or something like that. I know Phil went in and out for a little while. I think Grant too. So let's cover this move. Why did this make the move in which it made? Well, hey, we know that news came out, but we're not just buying the stock because news comes out. I mean, if that was going to make us money every time, I don't think you and I would be on a call right now. So that's where I would say, where do we have our big levels? Well, looking at this type of stock, it's not a cheap stock. This is not ACRS. Right away, without looking at Bookmap, I would just be inclined to focus on like every dollar. 28, 29, 30, and above. Just plot these for right now. But we'll take a look at what Bookmap has here, see where the actual orders were. And, well, not a surprise, we do have orange lines here stretching across the page, $29, $30 after that. We assume for there to be a level at 28, albeit no order there just yet. But still 29 and 30. Those are your two larger levels to work off of here going into the day. The only other thing I would kind of think about is like, all right, we got some good volume, I reckon, here at 27.50. That's just all from consolidation. So we'll see if that could become a viable entry level here by the time the market opens up. Like, we know it moved up, obviously, but just saying. From 27.50, it took off right away. So we're waiting the first 5 minutes anyway. I'm shooting straight here in front of you folks where I tell you, you can't really get in off of 27.50 unless if you're just hitting buy at market at 9:30 and like 2 seconds after the open. Like, we're not trying to do that. So, hey, this took off right away, moved up even higher afterwards here. It's 9:35 right now, and it's testing 29. Well, what do we do from here? This is where we have to either see resistance get broken through over time, which it does, or we try and see some support level in between. The tough part with trying to see support in between here was that maybe the pre-market top could have been flipped into support, but there isn't much of like a specific price here that's creating like the level. Like, this is your pre-market high here at the time, but that doesn't mean this is your level. Like, there's a couple bars that are around 28.50-ish, maybe. It's like there isn't as clear of a top here for you to say, oh, it's a chart level. It ended up basically swooping under and back above it. It did its job afterwards. I think the better entry here is off at 29 because there wasn't really good volume in between 28 and 29. If there was, maybe I'd use that. But there really wasn't. And if like the pre-market highs or this was a more formidable chart level, I would be more keen to use that. I was even calling that out, saying like there's a chance for it to happen, but it sliced below it, got pretty shaky. Your better entry was off the higher price level here at 29. The more times this stabs over resistance, like the actual iceberg resistance here, the more times it does it in a smaller, time frame, it's more prone to make that move. So you ended up getting your move either way. It was just off the higher price level here at 29. This didn't pull back deep enough to flip 28 properly into support. We're not trying to catch a falling knife on the way down. If you got in between, in hindsight, it worked out for you. But the reason why it shook so deep here is because there's really not much good volume in between 28 and 29. So it just took another push back over 29 and it ran. You could probably just say the same thing going forward for every dollar level. More times it stabs over 30, it should break over it. When a stock breaks over resistance and it runs afterwards, that's where you would expect resistance to flip. This even got a little hairy here. It broke below it. It held under it for about 3-4 bars in a row, but it broke back above it. Then it did its job again. So it was a pretty volatile move here, this AI, but it played in accordance to support resistance properly. I mean, hell, even 32. It was holding under 32 for a little while. This is technically your first test of it, so I wouldn't be as bullish immediately, but it broke above it. It is moving off of it properly now. So now there is the prospect of this area later today flipping into a support, probably drag back down here, and we'll see if this could hold as support for then another move back up later on. If it slices right back below it here, below 32, and just drops, then probably game over, probably trade over at that point. But here at this point, hey, broke above resistance, it ran, it moved, a decent little move. At this point now, there is fair game to try and see if 32 could flip into support. That's it. But for anyone here that's like new to trading, don't get me wrong. It's faster now than it will be in 1 month from now. It will be faster now than it will be in 2 months from now. Things are going to slow down. If you're a new member of CTU here, if you find this quick, if you find this fast, there are some programs we have to look at, right? It's not just the chart. We're looking at level 3. It's not just the charts. It's also level 4, right? We have to know how to scan as human beings, not even as traders, as human beings. We have to be organized. We have to be timely. We can't be lazy. We're going to miss opportunities if we do that. We're going to blow our account up if we are too lazy to set our stop. So there are human characteristics involved that we need to be on top of in order to be more, organized as traders alike. But here, this is where I'll tell you, every trade begins with the entry, and every entry to me is dictated off of a big level. If I don't have a big level, I don't have a trade. If I have a big level, I got to see the stock either repetitively test the level as resistance. I'll feel good. Or if it already broke over resistance and it ran off that resistance, then in that case, to try and see the flipping of that into support. I don't want to give too much away from class yesterday, but like even going back to DraftKings, it's like, come on, like this resistance here at the time flipped perfectly into support throughout the day. That's what led to the higher high later on, right? So as long as you're starting with those principles, the basic principles that we just covered 24 hours ago in class, it slows the speed of the pitch down greatly in the heat of the moment. If you're like a baseball fan, hockey, football, it slows the speed of everything down. The puck, the ball, whatever you want to call it, becomes a lot easier, right? All right, real quick from Phil joining us on YouTube today. Phil S., I appreciate your chat here. Just catching it right now. So actually only from a few minutes ago here. He says, I read why this jump has occurred on ACRS. Let's go back to ACRS. Do you pay attention to some of these analysts indicating range from 7 to 13, or do we just watch for the volumes to dictate the increase? Oh, it's an excellent question, Phil. I appreciate your participation here, and feel free to join us inside our live trading room down the line here. But to answer your question exactly, let me go to Benzinga. Was there also, I'm assuming the answer is yes. That's what Phil's saying, but I'm going to take a look here to see, was there an analyst upgrade with this too? Some like crazy upgrade from some analyst, Jeffries. So they announced it, a few different firms did, right? I mean, a whole bunch actually did. Look at this. Got Piper Sadler. Some news came out. It was an $80 million private placement on top. So a few different analysts and firms. Piper Sadler raises their price target to 13. There you go. BTIG announces an $8 price target. Jefferies announces a $7 price target. Leerink announces they raised their price target to 7. So this is the one that our friend here, Phil, was mentioning just on YouTube. Piper Sandler raised their price target to 13. Well, when the stock was trading at $3 to begin the day, and you see 13 being announced as like a price target, you might get excited, right? Like to the naked eye, I'm saying it's like, if I'm reading the newspaper and I see like so-and-so firm believes this stock can go up 400%. Oh, shit, let me hit the buy button, right? That's the natural, uneducated thought, right? Because even if it goes up to $7 instead of 13, if you can get in at 350, if you can get in at $4, that's a huge win, right? I remember my first like crazy price target I've ever seen. And it was for this like cheap stock. I don't even know if it's still listed. Let's see. Seal? Not even listed anymore. Delisted. But this stock, Seal, a long time ago had price target. It was like a $2 stock. I think they announced like a $12 price target or $15 price target, something crazy. And when you have such an astronomical number being, announced like that, the thought is like actually like, hey, if this is at $3, $4 now, shit, if this can go up to $5 and I can get out there, that's a huge gain anyway for me. If I can, take 1,000 shares, get in at 4 and get out on those 1,000 shares at $5,000 profit in one day's trading and in one morning's worth of trading, that sounds great to me. So that's a very good thought to have, especially if it's like some astronomical price number or astronomical price target. If they announce a $7 price target here, that's not really as crazy as you can see. If you're kind of new to looking at price targets and upgrades, downgrades, analyst ratings, the more crazy the number, that's where you want to think like, okay, well, that doesn't come out too often. So even if the stock can make a fraction of the move to get up towards that price, that to me would be my expectation. And if I can map out a trade based off of that, fine by me, right? I mean, it's like kind of like saying, let's see here, just on a very extreme level. This stock HKD within like 2 or 3 days time back in 2022 popped from like $10 up to $2,500 per share. A real number. Like we were watching the stock make that actual move. This is the biggest short squeeze I've ever seen in like my time here. Now, when this stock makes like a tiny little day trade move, we're not going to hold our breath waiting for that astronomical type of, pump again. But if it can make literally just a fraction of that type of move that it made back in 2022, and if that's your expectation, it sounds pretty healthy to me, right? So you got to know your worth in cases like that, and comparing that towards like, let's just say, so-and-so firm XYZ announces a $12 price target. We're not going to 12. We're not getting up to 12. But if you can get up to 5 when the stock is at $3 or $4 and you make that a day trade, that sounds great. And of course, with this as well, what definitely attracted me to expect more on this move from $4.13 was the gap fill here, right? There was still a bit of a gap for this to try and fill. I don't know the company financials. I don't know much about this company outside of the headline that we just read. Is there room to possibly see this try and go up even more? Maybe, but I don't want to roll the dice thinking that right now. I think this already made as good of a move as we could expect from the morning session and from yesterday. Remember, this stock was $2 or $2.05 to end last week. Made a 250% move already since then. So these are things that we need to have in our mind as far as expectations. And the more that you see these like price targets get announced and you see the reactions from them, you'll have a much better understanding reaction yourself when you're trading it. So very good question from our friend Phil S on YouTube right there. Appreciate you, Phil. Let's see. I had a question that came in earlier from chat. It was just in the morning broadcast from one of our new students, Eddie, I think. I just mentioned earlier. Actually, this is a good segue. SMCI, the only day trader, or actually aside from ARCS, in the morning, the first hour of my morning here, the only trade that I took really before that ACRS was SMCI. And, it took a little while for this to even materialize. And I guess I could have held even more or longer, moving up higher now, basically. But, Eddie had a question which will tie into, my review of this trade. So SMCI came out some news that they ended up getting a new independent auditor, and they're going to remain listed and whatever. So it ended up making a bit of a move today, of course, right? Dropped and then made a slingshot. When the market opens up, you'll often hear me call out and type in the chat board, so and so stock print, PRINT. I got a speech impediment here, so you say print. I'm not saying prince like musician. I'm saying print, PRINT. So we're seeing SMCI. There is a 1.6 million share print that got filled on time and sales at 2710. So I often call this out for certain stocks from our watch list when the market opens up. We'll go into the rhymes and reasoning of this dot, of this print in our classes. In phase 2 of our stock course, I'll talk a lot more about this. To give you the spark noted answer here, this print, much like any print on the time and sales window, it's just a transaction. It's a transaction that got completed between a buyer and a seller. So was this a buy? Was this a sell? We can't dictate that right away here when the market opens up. It's red, you could possibly call it a sell. Well, why did it move up then? That's what we'll cover in class. That part we'll cover in class right there, right? Now, I use this, though, as an entry level, though, because, well, shoot, if every trade begins with an entry and every entry begins with a big level, well, you tell me, what's a larger size? What's bigger? Is it the 428,000 shares at $30? Is it the 467,000 shares at $25 here? Or you tell me, is it the 1.66 million shares filled at 2710, right? So it's not a curveball question. This is the larger size. If I'm focused in on these as big levels, then how focused should I properly be on this price here? So what happened was this ended up moving back up to 2710. I thought we'd get a little resistance here at first. It broke right over it. Broke right over the level, moved up right up over the level, up over $1.50 off of it. Well, much like everyone here pretty much answered for me earlier, I'll flip it the other way around. When a stock breaks over resistance and it runs from resistance, I'm expecting that to initially be support. So I tried to get an entry right here, and it worked out pretty well. I had the entry right off of 2712 or something like that. I was in and out quick. I took one loss to begin. So I got in at 2709. I got stopped out and it shook back up on me. So I took it afterwards. And then afterwards, I ended up getting out a little profit here, 2771. So, in and out, but I wanted more out of it though here. It just shook around a little too much for my liking. Typically the first test of that broken resistance is the best test to see that act as support. So I thought it would be pretty good here. It came back down a little quicker than I thought. So I got out and I took my money. But you know what? This would have wasted my time anyway if I was like hyper focused on this and that was it, because I did move over eventually to ACRS later on. If I was watching this chop around, I'm missing out on plenty of other trading opportunities out there. So did this eventually make a move back up? Yeah, it did. There could have been more room on this trade afterwards, especially here. Breaks back above it, pulls back, and right on this red candle, like this is your little ding of support. Perfect. And it gets you what you want later on. Like this would have been a much more proper move that I was expecting here at the time. Give me a couple points. For as much as this stock was moving back yesterday, up and down and up and down, see a $1.50, $2 move off a big level is definitely not out of the realm of possibility for this stock. For ACRS, I wouldn't be thinking $1.50, $2 per level, or off of a level, I should say. If you get it, great. But for a more expensive stock, that's just kind of more expected there. So going back to that last one, SMCI, I was looking for that $1.50, $2 move here and just wasn't really giving it to you there at that time. So that's it. So Eddie, kind of answered your question there, right? Going over the opening bell print. That's what I wrote in the chat board just earlier to you. But literally, though, any singular transaction that shows up on time and sales is a print. Like right now, as we're talking real time here, every one of these is a print. Every one of these is a print, a transaction on the tape. That's it. All right, give me a quick sec here, folks. Just gonna go through my inbox here in the meantime, and then we'll just take a look at a couple of other trades. I had some questions on Bitcoin. I don't want to do the whole Bitcoin stuff right now, just because I don't want to, take up too much time in Traders Talk going over something that we've been covering for months now. I actually try to go and find this on our archived recordings of Traders Talk. I wanted to dig up some receipts. I was having a tough time going through it all. Trust me, I have an annoying voice to begin with, so listening to my own self on a recording, it's tough. No, but seriously, it's like I went back in January's Traders Talk, back from mid-January. I was trying to find the clip where I was saying, listen, Bitcoin's at 40,000. This is going to take off. This is going to be a huge run across the mid to end of this year. Get in now. Like we were calling Bitcoin out at like 39, 40,000 when it was like making its last little dip then. If you want to know my Bitcoin targets, my price prediction, all that shit, we made a whole video. It's on our YouTube channel. And Rich, if you're there right now, if you don't mind reposting that for all of our students here in chat, Glenn, George, Eddie, Marcella, we'll just send you the link right now in our main chat board to that video. But it's on our YouTube directory right there at Cyber Trading U. All right. So, I'll just mention at least, I mean, you're getting some stocks that are moving with Bitcoin pretty nicely. IBIT is the Bitcoin ETF. So, as long as you're seeing higher highs here, I'm assuming that Bitcoin is continuing to make higher highs of its own. Yeah, we're almost at all-time highs again. We're almost back over 93,000 here. So, there's not much I could really say otherwise, right? It didn't pull back low enough to try and test for a gap fill. I wasn't expecting that anyway. But, if it's not going to break lower, then we are going to get a move up higher. And I think that we'll eventually get to 100,000 by like December, some point. If it's not the end of December, maybe it's the beginning. I'm not holding my breath because this is a long game still. This is like till the end of next year. That's kind of where I'm thinking the end of the bull market will be. So we're going to have a lot of ups. We're going to have some downs. We're going to have some dips. We're going to have some higher lows. It's all going to work out in the end, but definitely right now we're looking good today. We'll see if we can break all-time highs today. That's pretty much it. That's all I got for you there on the Bitcoin front. But, again, we'll link the video there. If not coming up, Rich might be on break. We'll get it out to all of our students here in chat just before we, or as we finish up. From Phil as well on YouTube, he says, will you take a look at PLTR? How would you structure an opinion for this stock? Well, I'll tell you what, PLTR was breaking all-time highs, much like IBIT was for a little bit there, right? I mean, very impressive. Trading so above its earnings, like PE ratio. Holy shit. So the thing with this now is that very similar. It's like we're not seeing lower lows. We started to build a support from the end of last week around, I guess, 52-ish or 58-ish. And even yesterday, we dipped down there, but snapped back up hard. And then today, right back up again we go. So where you're looking for any sort of weakness, not getting it, at least yet. So, at least for this, you're just still looking to play the higher low game. Hey, this support level could very well break in due time. And then from there, you might have to look for your next level, perhaps down around 51-ish, perhaps down here, looking at certain lows. But otherwise, if you're looking for a move back up, get like a 5 or 10 minute chart just to mess around with for right now, just to get you a cleaner intraday chart level. This was looking pretty clean here at first because you had a nice little resistance. It moved up there again. It broke over it. It flipped it pretty properly into support. Like this was good. Since it smashed below it, this should be resistance coming up in the interim in the very near short term, right around 63-ish, 63, 63.50-ish. Look to see that hold initially. And then over time, the more it can keep pressing up against it, look to see if it could more so flip into support. But if it doesn't even get up there and it makes the lower highs still, then you might get the retest of 58 and change later on as support. That's all. That's pretty much all I got for you on PLTR right now. Now, I could show you the heat map. I could show you at least, what the heat map looks like. Oh, he says not opinion. I'm sorry. He says option. I'm sorry. I got a speech impediment. I'm also dyslexic, so pardon me there. No, it's to say though, for an option play at least. Well, it depends. Are you doing more of a long-term, thing, or are you just doing a day trade? Just doing it in and out today? Because if it's just in and out today, the more it presses up against 62 even here, there is the thought of continuation. I would probably wait a little bit throughout the day to see that resistance eventually break. Maybe this holds for the coming hour or so. Then, like 3 o'clock, it can give you that pop. Now, if you're looking more for a long term, option call on it, that's where I would rather you just wait to see confirmation. Pardon me, confirmation over a level. Wait to see like the closing price above one of these resistance lines here on the daily. So, I mean, it did that here, but it came back down below it pretty hard. So, if it can close back above this, that would be even better long term. But you don't need that if it's just a little scalp, little day trade type thing. So, that's all. All right, folks. I'll tell you what, I think we're going to finish up here in just a little bit and make this a more abridged version of Traders Talk for today. Right now, AI is on the way up to 33. So everything that we were just talking about here, there wasn't even too much room for a pullback down to 32. You'd figure if it could, it might look to hold it initially. This just kept grinding on up. So now we got our next resistance ahead here at 33, about 30,000 shares sitting out there on the offer, on the ask. Go. Oh, here's a nice trade to keep an eye on. We called this out in the morning session a little bit. I mean, our focus was elsewhere for a little while, but APLD. APLD had a pretty good push here, but we knew that resistance was going to be at $9. That was where we had our iceberg level throughout the morning. So it got us what we wanted after we had called it out. It was good for about like 20, 15, maybe 25 cents if you were able to get it sooner. But, basically this flattened out for a little while. Now, just recently, ran right over resistance. So it made a pretty good pop. It moved off of it pretty well. This would be a good setup to try and see support begin to build off of 9. Have it, test $9 a little bit here, see if it could even nip under and over. But, seeing this hold back above this as support for a higher high later in the day, that's a pretty appealing setup. That's something I'd want to get my hands on here soon. Just to dig into something quick before we finish up, at least here, I had a student discuss their thoughts on a swing trade for the stock SYM. And a very good thought, right? I just want to make it known because for my member Phil on YouTube that was asking about PLTR options, I was asking like, hey, is it a short-term thing or a long-term thing? If it's a long-term thing, you got to be more patient because you got to see confirmation over a key level. Like for instance, SYM, my student Yehuda called out a pretty good level right around here at like 38 or so. Good support for a little while here. If that could flip back into support, this might take off again. Good point. But today is only Tuesday. I'd want to see this weekly candle close above this line for any like more confirmation of strength. Because who knows, by tomorrow, this might just be right back down. It could be like a long upwick, pop and drop type move. So if you're looking more for a long-term swing thing, I mean, look for it on the daily chart as well as the weekly chart here too. But I just used the weekly chart for this one. Look to see the close above the level. That will give you better confirmation for a swing trade. For a day trade, we don't always have the opportunity to wait for that because going with good momentum on a level break, oftentimes we don't get as clean of a pullback. So in the event that we do get a pullback, we know what to look for. But that's why I'm keen to take certain breakout trades at least once it retests and rebreaks the level. I'm patient, but I'm not going to wait for like a close. I'm just going to try and take it on a rebreak. If you're looking more for a long-term swing hold type thing, I'd rather you be more patient, wait for the close. All right. So, folks, I think that's where we're going to finish up, at least for right now. My tongue is a little tied, so untied. But for all of us here otherwise, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works. At Cyber Trading U is our social handle right there, especially YouTube. Look to follow us, subscribe to our YouTube channel to get more of our live audio commentary, our streams, our workshops, etc. You could send over any follow-up questions right over to my email address, josh@c2trading.com. Of course, that goes for any of our students here. You know where to find me, though, at least if you're a student. Be right here in our trading room. So from Marcella, Grant, Brian, Eddie, Leda, You don't even need to email me. You got the direct line right here. You could just private chat me inside our live trading room, and I'll write you back instantly, pretty much, right? Michael and Grant, Thomas, Charlene, all of us here just joining us right now. So you can private chat me. You can send over a quick email. No problem at all there, Leda and Phil as well. Phil says there with the PLTR, he was thinking only days to just like a week. Yeah, so in that case, then maybe you look at not the weekly graph, but maybe you'd want to focus on the daily chart. And if there's a strong, level, look to see if it can close above it. But otherwise, though, right now, as far as like an intraday trade, like a day trade here, 62 would be your level to work off of right now, Phil. All right. But hey, for Phil, for all of our members on social media, if you're interested in taking the next step, joining us inside our live trading room, scan that QR code with your phone, with your camera. It's on the top left right there. If you're not as high tech, if you're not as with the times, all good. I'm not as much either. So go right down to the link on the banner below, the scrolling blue banner below there, c2.co/trial. Again, c2.co/trial. That will take you right to the webpage to sign up for a trial to our live trading room, get you a week-long trial, access to Fausto, 35 plus year pro in the market, main instructor here, of course, myself, and then Rich and all of our students, at least inside our chat board, get the full-fledged commentary in the morning and the afternoon. But otherwise, we look forward to having you there. And for all of our students here, we'll be back on. We'll be back later today, heading into the afternoon. If not myself, then Rich taking you into the market close. Talk to you all then. Take care.